I just wanted to give a shout out to Men's Rights Edmonton. I was watching the videos that you did back and forth with Bar, and really wanted to share my thoughts about this because I really have a very personal sort of life-changing experience relating directly to anti-feminist activism, and I think it's really important for those people who sort of are opposed to focusing so much effort on anti-feminism to maybe hear someone's experience with it and how it really did change my life. So from mid-2004 to 2014, I was a very committed communist activist. Now, there's a lot of baggage that goes along with communist activism. You're not simply opposing the bourgeois state and capitalism in general. It seems as the years go by, you're picking up more and more things like, especially since social justice warriors started taking over the movement. And yeah, I think that there is a difference between communists and social justice warriors, but that difference is fading by the day, as I think most new communists are just social justice warriors. But anyway, I'm not even a communist anymore, so. So anyway, I spent lots of years, obviously, involved in this milieu and around feminists all the time. And I considered myself a feminist, I'd have to say. I didn't really understand anything about the patriarchy, but what feminist really does. And so, I went along with it, calling myself a feminist, saying, oh, well, feminism just equal rights for women. And actually, by 2011-12, I became a member of the Revolutionary Communist Party of Canada. Now, they're the most radical communist group in the country, and they're also the fastest growing one. And partly that might be because of their extreme focus on feminist issues. For me, it was all about sort of looking at, tangible power structures like the state and sort of like capital concentrations and stuff. I didn't really get into minority issues and feminist issues all that much, although obviously I had to sort of agree with the general perspectives of them. I didn't actively partake in them myself. So yeah, this group formed, or I joined this group. They were fairly new at the time, but they were growing fast. They still are, as far as I know. Part of the initiation of joining the group was that you had to declare yourself a feminist as well. But I didn't really know what being associated with radical feminists was going to be like, because I had kind of always worked on my own before starting my own clubs and that. So after I joined them, they actually were becoming more radical feminists. Like the party was actually overtaken by rad femmes, and they started directing all of the party's efforts towards women's and minority issues, queer, trans issues and stuff. Things that were just so alien to me as a cis white male that I was starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable, like I didn't really belong. So I was in the group at the time when the Warren Farrell event was being disrupted, when fire alarms were being pulled, with Janice Fiamengo in Ottawa being disrupted, and the feminist in Montreal who claimed she was attacked by an MRA. I was in the group at that time, and this group is the group behind virtually all the activities, the anti-MRA activities that have taken place in Canada. Like virtually all of them, they're either the core organizers or they're involved in those activities directly, helping to organize them. I myself did not partake in any of those activities, but I definitely gave my consent to them. I approved of them, applauded them, etc. And I was at meetings where they were planned, discussed in depth, analyzed for their effectiveness, etc. So, but then something happened to change my opinion very suddenly, and that was actually GamerGate. Now, I mean, you think like, oh, GamerGate, how the hell does that take a guy from being a revolutionary communist feminist supporter to being, well, a libertarian anti-feminist. And literally it was one weekend of watching Thunderfoot and Sargon of Akkad, Karen Strong, and eventually Warren Farrell, the event that my group helped to disrupt. And literally just one weekend. And just a few days after posting, Sarkeesian's videos to my YouTube and praising them, somehow I stumbled upon Thunderfoot's sort of critique of her, and watched all the videos that he had up at the time on feminism, because something after watching that first video, and I'm surprised I sat through the whole thing, but he somehow caught my attention, and just the way that he spoke and the points that he was raising, because I associate myself as a gamer, right? I'm part of that subculture. I know, your typical cis white male neckbeard guys. I'm friends with them. I've been playing games since Atari, So I knew that, gamers weren't sexist. I just knew it because I knew gamers. I know the demographic. I am a gamer. And, I'm not sexist. I don't know anyone who is, or who I would consider sexist anyway. I don't anyone can be called sexist by certain feminists. So I knew it wasn't true. So that's probably why I decided to listen to Thunderfoot and Sargon talking about the topic, because, being called a sexist and knowing that you're not one, sort of begins to discredit the narrative. So by the time I watched the Warren Farrell video and saw the people that my comrades were harassing and demonizing, belittling, even like borderline assaulting, I was nearly in tears watching that, just because of how guilty that I felt about being a part of that, and having given my approval to those actions when there was nothing Warren said in that lecture that was in any way sexist. I just couldn't believe it, and I felt like such an idiot for being duped for so long. My opinion changed essentially overnight. Within 2 days, by Monday, I was posting Warren Farrell's video on my Facebook and, saying, okay, comrades, listen to this guy, right? Just listen to him. He's not saying anything sexist. He's just talking about issues regarding men, real things. We should hear him out, maybe even send an apology, etc., right? Our actions were not in the right. And, by Tuesday, I was completely ostracized. There was, I was the typical misogynist, woman-hating apologist, etc., right? So, obviously, that strategy isn't going to work on everybody. Not the certain hardcore rad femmes. But to their, the middle mass supporters of them, which probably I was, could have considered myself as part of, anti-feminist activism is extremely effective. 10 years of calling myself a feminist, and I was completely changed. My opinions were reversed in 2 days. So when it's argued that it's pointless to attack feminism, that it's a never-ending battle, that you won't convince them, that it wastes time, it doesn't actually help men, I completely disagree. Because without that, I'd still likely be towing their line. How else are people supposed to realize that feminism is wrong without a counter-narrative, if feminism is the only thing anyone ever hears, then it's hard to question it for a lot of people. Some people could come to it on their own. I totally get that. But for a lot of people, it's just not going to happen that way. So I was a member of the group organizing all these anti-MRA activities, and I was changed in a weekend. So that does a lot of good for men. Because when you're no longer beholden to an ideology that, you know, views your own gender as the enemy, you can stop, you know, beating yourself up. And there's a great deal of mental health issues on the left, especially with men. Like, just a couple weeks ago, a guy I knew killed himself. And, like, I myself have been pretty close to that in the past. And so, you know, in addition to this, I'm actually married. I've been married for, like, 11 years or something. And we just had a son, like, little under 2 years ago. He's like 21 months old or something. And so what would his life have been like if he grew up in a house where his father taught him feminist bullshit? Like, ironically, his mom isn't even feminist. So, you know, changing the ideological paradigm is absolutely crucial for men to even start to deal with their own problems or go their own way, or, you know, whatever. Recognize their suffering. So if men don't recognize there is a problem, and they don't recognize it because they've been taught not to recognize it by feminist gynocentric philosophy, then, you know, we can't even begin to deal with the issues because they don't even recognize that they're there, which is why a lot of men sort of don't really understand why MRAs exist, because they're always told that they have all the rights and all the power. And if you never hear an alternative to that narrative, then you just don't even assume any differently, unless you're perhaps in a very personal position to think otherwise. So, I mean, this is by no means scientific. It's simply my own personal experience extrapolated. But, you know, I do think this is how most men will come to see feminism as a lie. And it's only then that we can begin to view our own lives and experiences in the light of truth.